Hi, I'm Paul Marcel. Mother's Day is around the corner, and I was thinking to myself, I know I made my mother something, but I couldn't remember what it was or where I put it. So about a month ago, I was looking for some blades, and then I ran across the mahogany box I had made her. Now this is just a jewelry box that I put together out of mahogany. The intention was to use it as a practice for doing hand-cut dovetails, hand shaping with planes, just a fun project to do. And at the time when I did it, I got to the point where I needed to lock it and I needed the hinges, but when I ordered them, they were 2 months past due. So I put the box on the shelf. Then when the parts came in, I was busy, so I put the parts on the shelf, and then I forgot where I left the shelf. So now that I have it and I've applied a nice couple coats of water locks on it for a nice shine, I really like that finish on a box like this. What I want to do is I want to finish it off for Mother's Day, and now it's crunch time. The inside of the box, since this was glued together and then cut open with a bandsaw and then the rest finished, of course there's a little bit of glue squeeze out in these corners, but that's okay because the intention was I was going to line the bottom with some batting with some cardboard, if I have some cardboard somewhere. Man, where do you get cardboard? I might have to order something from Lee Valley. And then the top is also going to be lined with the same fabric that I'll use on the bottom. Now in the box I applied 2 little cherry runners on the side. Now the intention there was I was going to make 2 small boxes that would sit inside and sit on top of the runners, so that in a way she could move the boxes side to side, take them out, maybe just leave one in and slide it side to side, whatever. It's more or less configurable in that sense. Now in keeping with the idea that I did all this with hand tools, I thought, well, make the boxes with hand tools as well. So that's what I'm going to do in this series of videos. Now a while ago I did a demonstration for somebody of a power sander, and to show how well it worked on taking wood from down to flat and to polish, what I did is I used a piece of firewood. So it looks so good because of course it's a quarter sawn flitch that I went ahead and I resawed it yesterday. And I've had it stickered here and clamped down in place, and actually it's been outside in the backyard for at least 4 years. 4 years in Arizona, it's bone dry. So the 2 boxes that I'll be making is, one of them is going to be it's going to be mitered corners, and then there'll be a reinforcement put on the miters that's more of a French style, which is kind of a kerf that's cut in at an angle, and then it's filled with a very small sliver of wood, a decorative piece of wood. It can really look nice. So that'll be one of the boxes. The second box will be done with basically hand-cut dovetails, just to stick a little bit more traditional. So this way here I get a chance to practice both just for some fun. Now watching a video of somebody making 2 little boxes like that isn't going to be at all interesting, so I thought I would throw in using a couple of tools that maybe you haven't had a chance to tinker with. And this way here you can see how we can build the box together using those tools and see how they work. Now the first tool is the Jmp V2 multiplane from Bridge City Toolworks, and what this is it's a plain body that has some dovetail ways on the bottom, and you can get a number of profile blades for them. So these sole kits will be like, this is a 1/4 inch dado kit, this is a 1/16 inch dado kit, and then this one here puts a cove on the corner of a box or an edge. So there's actually a number of profiles. There's approximately 30 profiles, I believe. These are the 3 that I think I'll be interested in using for this particular project. Now the 1/4 inch dado blade is going to be used so that we can create the groove that goes along the bottom of the box, so that we can put the glued up panel as the bottom. The corner cove blade is going to be used so that after we complete the box, the top edge of the box can have a cove placed on the outside or on the inside. We'll see what it looks like when we go to assemble it. The 1/16 inch dado blade actually makes a very, very fine line. And I thought this might actually be good for a couple decorative effects on the outside, whether we do some cross-cut dados or we actually do some grooves across it. We'll see. So this is just mostly for some ideas. And lastly, we'll do most of the dimensioning on the Jointmaker Pro from Bridge City Toolworks. So if you've never seen this before, it's a really interesting tool, and it has, while on the outside it looks like it's just a way of using a Japanese pull saw using a sliding table, there's actually a lot of things that you can do with this saw that aren't evident until you get to tinker with it for a while. So this is going to be a good chance to show you how you tinker with it. I want to start with a quick tour of the Jmp V2 from Bridge City Toolworks. So we're just going to call it the Jump. It's a lot shorter. And the easiest way I think to do it is I'm just going to make a couple simple cuts, but I'm going to explain what I'm setting up as I do it. I'll go through each of the steps that you would normally do while you're doing the setup, although you don't normally do all of them on each one of the cuts. So we'll bring you in a little closer so you can see what's going on. So in this angle you can see that there's a blade mounted on a spine here in the center. What this is effectively it's like a Japanese pull saw just being mounted, held upright, and held along the entire length of the spine. So as a pull saw, of course, it's going to cut as it's being pulled, or if the material were going this direction. So that's actually what this table is doing. It's going to slide. It slides on 4 rails, and as it slides across, you can see that the blade would end up going a little deeper in the stock. probably to make it a little bit more visible, if you look at this piece here, of course it can clearly go over where the cut path is, but as I slide it up over the top here, it would be buried by the blade. So we should actually be able to get this in one cut as we push it through. So if we line this up to make just take off a little slice like in a way like a pepperoni slice, and it comes right off. Now, of course, you're not going to be able to do that with, say a wider stock. You're going to have to take multiple passes, or if you're doing it, say, with a piece of birch, it's a little bit harder than, in this case here, yes, this may be soft maple, but it's also a much smaller piece. So you'd end up taking a few extra cuts. Now, there are a couple of parameters that you can change while you're using this. There's a handle in the front that as you crank the handle, you can see that the blade is rising up. So normally, if you're taking multiple passes, you're going to make a pass, push the blade down, and then you're going to crank the handle and push it down again. Now, you get the feel for this after you use it, whether you're going to do a full turn, 2 turns, 3 turns in between each pass. Now, the other factor, and just to make this a little bit easier to see on the camera here, I'm going to lower this down until the front of the blade is now below the table here. But you can see as I move this up, it happens that it just barely clears this piece of wood. There's a pitch control here that controls the angle of the blade, so how aggressive of a cut it's going to be. Right now, if I were to turn this even further, now it clearly beats this wood, so it would actually end up cutting this wood. I'm going to set this as high as it'll go, and we'll see where it would be cut. There we go. Here, you would actually clear the wood all the way back here. So that's a very aggressive cut. You're probably not going to be able to do it. When you're over here, of course, you can lower it down. So if you're cutting, say, a considerably harder wood, say birch, or that just simply has a larger cross section, or even one that is just simply wider, so you're trying to take more in a cut, then you would need a little bit of a lower pitch. So like using that as an example, we can go ahead and use this wider board. So let's go to take a slice off of this wider board, just as an example. You already saw how the small maple piece went off pretty easily. It's below, the blade is currently below the wood over here, and if you were to take a look at this end, you'd see that actually on a single pass, I'd almost be taking, a little over half of the wood. That's an awful lot. So let me crank down the pitch, so we're taking something a bit more reasonable, and there I'll be taking off of about 1/3 of the wood at a time. So we should be able to get it in about 3 passes. Now what I'll do is I'll scoot this over so we can get our slice, put a little clamp here to help hold it in place. Now there are actually 2 of the unit. I removed the other one since it would be in the way of what you could see. So what will happen is we'll do 1 pass, it'll cut about 1/3 of the way through, then we'll crank this handle to raise the blade further and make a 2nd pass, and then hopefully 1/3, and we'll be all the way through. Hair more. There we go. Now normally it wouldn't have such a small off cut and it wouldn't get in the way. And as you can see, it's a very clean cut. It's a little difficult for you to see, but there you can see that the cut, you don't see any real saw marks at all. It feels smooth as glass, absolutely smooth as glass. That's partly just because even though you could cut this by hand, somebody that's really good with the hand tools could cut this by hand with a Japanese saw. I mean, any little amount of wiggle that you're going to get is going to give you a little bit of a kerf line, just like it would on a bandsaw, the vibration that's going through the blade. Same idea here. So you get some very nice clean cuts with this. So now, normally you don't sit there and monkey around with, measure the front, measure the back, adjust the pitch. You start to just get used to some of the feel and the numbers of where you're going to be. Probably the biggest thing to remember is that you leave the blade up near the top and you put a piece of wood there and then, oh yeah, it's still up. Not that that's ever happened to me. So let me swing this around so that you can see the controls from the front. Now, of course, the table is the main control that you deal with. You're just using that to push the stock, as well as you can set up a number of custom jigs. There is another fence board that comes with the unit itself, and it's one that the fence board is actually angled towards the front. So if you're cutting, say, a square piece of wood, pieces that you don't need to keep actually flat, but you actually are trying to hold down, this one here is a better fence than, say, the flat one. But you can easily make your own jigs with these boards or cut your own. Now the front of the saw has a protractor here for setting the bevel angle of the saw blade. Once you've calibrated it, it's very easy, in fact very accurate. I was cutting dovetails and for fun I tried to set the saw blade up to 8 degrees visually using a dovetail guide, and then I checked the marker afterwards and it was dead on the 8 degrees after you've calibrated it. So I was very happy with that. Now this is a locking knob that when you unlock the front one and then a corresponding back one, it moves the whole blade, swings. So you can't see that because of the table here, but the blade unit itself pivots so that you can set your blade angle. Now you see these little tabs down here, and as I'm hitting one of these, it's basically a stop that I've set up so that when I want to return to 0, I just go till I hit the stop and then I can lock it into place. And I've also happened to have calibrated one for 45 degrees and then one for doing 8-degree dovetails. If I were to move this over here, that would be for my 8-degree dovetail. So it's a very precision ground. All these parts, they all fit absolutely snug with 0 light going through them. So it's a really impressive piece of engineering. If anything, even if you're not interested in the JMP, but you're interested in mechanical devices, take a look at one of these up close. I think you'll be really impressed with it. So let's take a look at this little log set that I've made. Now, if I want to make 2 drawers, or 2 boxes inside the jewelry box, so they're going to be 1 1/8 inches high on the sides. So what I was looking at is I'll be able to get the 4 sides out of these 3 pieces here. When I rip them, this one here will become 2 sets, and this will become 1 and 1. These will form all the sides of the boxes, and then these 2 pieces here will be able to be ripped and glued together to make the panel that'll become the bottom of the boxes, and then they'll be split in half in order to make the 2 separate boxes. So I think that's what we're going to go with, and I'm going to go do a little bit of work here, and then we'll come back to do some dimensioning. So I've got my front to back pieces all ripped on the one side, and of course the bottom part is being squared. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and pivot this over, cross cut these at 6 1/16, since that's going to be back to front distance, and then from there we'll be able to do the last rip to make these things completely dimensioned. Now, the way that we can do this, now there is no tape measure on here or anything like that. All we're going to do is, because we're using this single backer, you have a pretty good kerf line here that's clean to tell you where the cut's going to be. So we can place this up against the fence. Let's get these out of the way. Let me get a bigger one so you can see a little bit more clearly. So we can line that up, put this at the 6 1/16 mark, slide it over to where the kerf is going to be, and there we go. Now we can put a stop block over here, which actually isn't a bad idea, or we can just take a pencil and write on this. I mean, this is anodized aluminum. Just going to have to take a little bit of rubbing alcohol afterwards, a quick swipe, and it's gone. Oh, that's one thing. I started to slow down to add something to say. Once you start to push all the way through. If you stop halfway, you're going to have such a bind. So you really need to carry the push all the way through. And even if you stop in the middle and it feels like it's binding, what it really is just that it's getting harder to cut. So either try lowering the blade while it's in there and continue to push, but don't try pulling it back. There we go. 4 long sides cut the length with one side done. So now we can go ahead and we can rotate this over to get the thing straight. Now, of course, there we're going to want to go a hair over. The reason why is then I'm going to square these up, and then I'm going to put them in the vise, and I'm going to take one plain swipe over the top to make sure that they're all identical.